people say the past can surprise you, but I never thought it would turn my life upside down. 3 months ago, I learned that my uncle had passed away. We weren't very close, so it shocked me when I found out he had left me one of his houses in his will. At first, I was touched by his gesture, but soon that feeling turned into stress. With the twin baby girls to care for, the last thing I needed was to deal with an old house. My plan was straightforward: sell it as quickly as possible. Since the house was far away, on the other side of the country, I decided to move there temporarily to speed things up. Since I could work from anywhere with my laptop and phone, I arranged to work remotely. Unfortunately, my wife couldn't come with me because of her job, so I went alone, thinking I'd be back in a week. But I had no idea that this simple plan would throw my life into chaos. The days I thought I'd spend sorting out paperwork and getting the house ready to sell turned into something else entirely. A strange, terrifying experience that would change how I saw the world and myself. When I arrived, the house was breathtaking. It was huge, with tall ceilings, detailed wooden designs, and a charm that felt like something out of an old movie. But even though it was beautiful, it felt empty, almost lifeless. The air was cold and heavy, and it sent chills through me. The realtor met me at the door, handed me the keys, and quickly went over the paperwork before rushing off to another appointment. They assured me everything was fine, but something about the way they acted seemed odd, like they couldn't wait to leave the house. As their car disappeared down the road, I stood alone on the porch, staring at my new home. It felt overwhelming and strangely quiet, like it had been waiting for me. Inside, the house felt even more unsettling. Every step I took echoed, and the furniture, all covered in white sheets, looked like ghostly shapes. The realtor was handling most of the details, but delays kept piling up. My 1-week plan turned into 2, then 3. At first, I told myself it was like a mini vacation, a break from the chaos of parenting twins. But as time went on, the silence of the house started to feel heavy, almost alive. The first week felt strange, like I had stepped into someone else's forgotten life. Things weren't where I'd left them. My keys, for example, which I clearly remembered putting on the kitchen counter, would show up on the living room bookshelf. A small box of pens from the study somehow ended up in the hallway closet. At first, I blamed it on stress and being forgetful. But as it kept happening, I couldn't ignore it anymore. A coffee mug I left on the counter appeared on the windowsill instead. Then there were the shadows. I'd catch glimpses of something dark moving out of the corner of my eye. A flicker near the doorway, or a shadow shifting just beyond my sight. But when I turned to look, there was nothing. I tried convincing myself that it was my imagination, which may have been caused by exhaustion and the unsettling vibe of the house. But every time it happened, my heart raced, and my doubts grew stronger. The house seemed to amplify the silence. Outside, no birds were singing, no wind rustling the leaves, no hum of distant traffic. Inside, the wooden floors didn't creak under my steps like you'd expect in an old house. It felt as if the house was trying not to disturb its own heavy, unnatural quiet. Apart from the occasional visit from the realtor, I was completely alone in the eeriest silence I'd ever experienced. Over time, it felt like the house itself was alive, holding its breath and waiting for me to make a move. Before I let the eerie atmosphere get to me, my neighbor stopped by. She was an older woman and brought along a golden retriever named Buster. She explained that she'd been taking care of Buster while my uncle was in the hospital. Now that I was here, she thought I should take him. Buster was exactly what I needed. His happy, playful energy helped push away the loneliness, and I grew attached to him quickly. But even Buster seemed uneasy in the house. He was fine exploring the first floor, wagging his tail as he sniffed around, but he flat out refused to go upstairs. I didn't force him. One day, Buster vanished. He had been sitting right at my feet, wagging his tail as I grabbed the treat jar. I opened it, looked away for just a moment, and when I turned back, he was gone. My heart skipped a beat. "Buster?" I called, my voice echoing in the unsettling quiet of the house. At first, I thought he'd wandered to another room, so I checked all his favorite spots: the couch, the kitchen, and the hallway by the front door where he loved to nap. But he wasn't anywhere. Panic bubbled up as I searched every corner of the first floor, calling his name louder each time. The house seemed to grow larger, almost endless, as I moved from room to room. The silence pressed on my ears, and the sound of my footsteps felt painfully loud. Then I stopped, staring at the staircase. Buster never went upstairs, not once. Yet, with nowhere else to search, I felt an uneasy pull to climb the stairs. Each step creaked loudly, the sound echoing in the stillness. The higher I climbed, the heavier the air felt. At the top, the hallway stretched out, dim and unfamiliar, even though I'd been up here before. I opened doors one by one, the guest rooms, the game room, the bathroom, but they were all empty. The shadows seemed darker up here, thicker, and the air had a faint musty chill that made my skin crawl. "Buster?" I called again, my voice cracking slightly. Just as I was about to head back down, I heard the faint sound of paws scrambling across the floor. Relief washed over me, and I rushed back down the stairs. There he was, running toward me from the kitchen, his tail wagging like nothing had happened. "Where were you?" I asked, kneeling to pet him. He licked my hand, his warmth reassuring me, but I couldn't shake a nagging thought. How had I missed him? And why did it feel like the house itself was toying with me? The layout of the upstairs was strange. A balcony overlooked the living room and entrance hall, with hallways branching off to guest rooms, a game room, and a bathroom. I had searched every room, every corner. Every door and window was locked. Yet, somehow, Buster had appeared downstairs, acting as if nothing was wrong. It was as if the house had its own rules, a game it was playing that I didn't understand. Work got busy, and I buried myself in spreadsheets and client calls. Days blurred together, and I often worked late into the night, barely noticing Buster whining for food or attention. Then it happened. One evening, as I wrapped up a call, a loud slam echoed through the house. A door had slammed upstairs. My heart jumped, and before I could react, Buster bolted up the stairs, something he had never done before. Fear surged through me, but I grabbed a frying pan for protection and followed him. At the top of the stairs, Buster stood frozen in front of the bathroom door, his tail tucked and his ears pinned back. The door, which I was certain had been shut earlier, was now wide open. A faint metallic smell hung in the air, sharp and unsettling. I reached for the hallway light switch and flipped it. Nothing happened. The bulb didn't even flicker. My chest tightened, and my breathing quickened as I stared into the pitch-black bathroom. The shadows inside seemed unnaturally thick, almost solid. "Buster, what is it, boy?" I whispered. He didn't move, his body tense with fear. Summoning all my courage, I stepped past him, my heart pounding. The cold bathroom tiles sent a chill through me as I entered. Then I felt it, something wet and sticky under my foot. I froze. Slowly, I crouched down and pulled my phone from my pocket, fumbling to turn on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness, and my stomach turned. Dark red streaks smeared the floor, glistening faintly. The trail led toward the bathtub, disappearing behind the curtain. For a moment, I was paralyzed. My hand shook as I reached out to the curtain. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to run, but I couldn't. With a single motion, I yanked the curtain aside. The tub was empty. The red trail ended abruptly at the edge of the porcelain, as if it had seeped into nothingness. Behind me, Buster let out a low, guttural growl. I spun around, my phone's light darting across the walls. The room was empty, but the heavy feeling of being watched was undeniable. I backed out of the bathroom, shutting the door tightly behind me. Buster pressed against my leg, his growl fading as if he too needed reassurance. Whatever had just happened, I knew this was only the beginning. The police arrived later, their heavy boots breaking the eerie silence of the house. They inspected the bathroom with sharp, skeptical eyes. After a while, one officer pointed to a corroded pipe near the baseboard and said it was just rusty water from a leak. I tried to believe them, to let their explanation calm my nerves. But as they left, the metallic smell still lingered. Deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The days blurred together, each one feeling the same as the last, like time didn't work properly inside the house. My supervisor gave me a week off to deal with stress, but even with fewer responsibilities, I couldn't focus. The house seemed to warp my sense of time. Hours would vanish in what felt like minutes, where moments would drag on endlessly. Sometimes I'd glance at the clock, only to see it jump ahead by several hours, leaving me confused and uneasy. The shift between day and night was just as disorienting. The house had large windows, but they didn't seem to let in enough light. One moment, faint sunlight would filter through, casting long shadows on the floor. The next, it was pitch black outside, as if the house had stolen the sunset and plunged me into darkness without warning. One evening, I heard a soft scratching sound, nails on wood. Buster, who had been lying by the couch, was now standing by the staircase, whining softly. My chest tightened as I followed his gaze upstairs. That's when I saw it. A message scrawled on the hallway wall in red. "Losing your mind?" The words burned into my mind. How had they gotten there? For days, I avoided the hallway, refusing to go near it. But every time I glanced upstairs, the message seemed more vivid, more pronounced, as if it was waiting for me. Finally, one night, I forced myself to approach it. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs, but as I drew closer, the message seemed to shift and writhe, almost alive. It felt like it was mocking me, daring me to question my sanity. I called the police again, but their search found nothing. Every door and window was locked, and there was no sign of forced entry. Still, the messages kept appearing. They showed up on the floors, the walls, and even the ceiling. Always the same haunting question. Losing your mind? I felt like I was coming undone. My neighbor mentioned that strange things had happened in the area before, but no one had any real answers. During our phone calls, my wife could hear the strain in my voice. She grew more worried each time we spoke, and even my daughters asked to talk to me. But when I heard their little voices, they sounded distant, almost unreal, like they were part of a dream. One night, I woke to find Buster pacing at the foot of my bed. His growls were low and steady, his eyes locked on a dark corner of the room. I followed his gaze but saw nothing there. Still, the air felt heavy, almost electric, like something unseen was watching us. Desperate for an escape, I reached out to an old college friend who lived nearby. He agreed to come pick me up and Buster. As I waited on the front porch, my phone buzzed. He said he was outside. But when I stepped out, the driveway was empty. "I'm right here," he insisted. But the house numbers on the curb were gone. Instead, the chilling words, "losing your mind," stared back at me, painted where the numbers had been. My hands shook as I hung up and went back inside, hoping I was imagining it all. But the strangeness didn't stop. The suitcase I had packed earlier was now empty, its contents neatly returned to their places. I stared at it from the couch, unable to comprehend what was happening. Had I forgotten to unpack it? Could I trust my memory at all? My thoughts spiraled as I sat there, my mind racing with questions and fears. The house felt smaller, the walls seeming to close in around me. Faint whispers teased the edges of my hearing. Soft, unintelligible murmurs that made my skin crawl. The air grew heavier with each passing second, pressing down on me like the weight of the house itself. No matter what I did, I couldn't leave the house. The doors wouldn't open, and the windows were sealed tight. Even when I somehow managed to step outside, I'd blink and find myself back inside moments later. It was like the house wouldn't let me go. Buster's condition grew worse. He became thin and sluggish, barely eating or moving. His once bright energy had faded completely. One night, the front door creaked open on its own. I hesitated, unsure if this was my chance or another trick. Summoning my courage, I stepped through. But instead of finding myself outside, I was climbing the staircase inside the house again. The sheer disorientation made my head spin. I tried to stay calm and think logically. Was the house some kind of trap? Was I losing my mind? Desperate for answers, I began writing everything down, hoping to uncover patterns or clues. But the more I wrote, the stranger it became. My sentences twisted into words I didn't remember writing, forming messages that made no sense. The harder I tried to hold on to reality, the more it slipped through my fingers. The house seemed to tighten its grip on me, and I felt more trapped than ever. A loud banging at the front door broke the silence. It was the two officers who had visited before. They came inside and began searching the house again. As they moved through the rooms, I suddenly heard one officer's voice grow faint, followed by a scream. I rushed downstairs and froze at the sight. One of the officers lay on the floor, a knife in his chest. To my horror, the knife was somehow in my hand, though I had no memory of picking it up. The other officer was gone, vanished without a trace. That night, I buried Buster in the backyard. My heart felt heavy, grief weighing me down. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Yet, the house's grip on me seemed stronger than ever. It wasn't just trapping me, it was playing with me. The house gave me glimmers of hope, only to snatch them away at the last second, like a cruel game. As the days stretched on, I began to wonder if I would ever truly leave, or if the house had already decided my fate. Time no longer felt real. Every attempt to leave the house only brought me back inside. The walls seemed alive, shifting and twisting around me. Messages appeared everywhere, mocking me, while hallucinations blurred the line between reality and nightmare. Even food felt unsafe. I was terrified it might turn into worms or poison the moment I tried to eat. My stomach growled with hunger, but fear kept me from putting anything in my mouth. One day, I found a photo album sitting on the dining table. I hadn't seen it before. As I flipped through it, my chest tightened. The pictures were of me and my family, but I didn't remember taking any of them. In some, my daughters looked older than they should have been. In others, they weren't in the pictures at all. The album felt like a message, though I couldn't tell if it was meant to comfort me or drive me further into despair. One day, the front door was open, and a police car waited in the driveway. My heart leaped at the sight. Freedom, I thought. I climbed inside, desperate to escape. But as I drove, the streets were eerily empty. No matter which direction I turned, every road brought me back to the house. Eventually, I was back in the living room, seated on the couch, gripping an invisible steering wheel. The realization hit me. The house's control over me was absolute. My memories started to slip away. I couldn't remember my uncle's name or what he looked like. My wife and children became distant, blurred figures in my mind. I wasn't even sure they had ever existed. Then came the voices. They whispered my name, laughed at my confusion, and shared secrets I didn't want to hear. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, as though they were alive, watching my every move. The house wasn't just trapping me, it was breaking me. Now, I sit in the study, typing as fast as I can. My words are the only thing keeping me grounded, but even they seem to turn against me. Messages appear on the screen. Lost your mind? Good. Now you won't mind losing the rest. The voices are louder now, circling me, mocking and taunting. The house has taken everything, my time, my memories, my identity. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't even know who I am. I'm nothing but a shadow of myself, trapped in this endless nightmare with no way out. I'm so tired, so hungry, and now I can hear them coming.